Hello, guys. Monday, week number 5, right? Which means that this week, um, after this week, we're going to be done with 1/3 of the semester. Wow, right? Um, so time is moving fast, and I hope you're learning a lot. Let me know if you need anything. Today, we're going to go over 2 chapters, chapter 8 and chapter 9. And then before that, though, I want to give you some feedback about what you have already submitted. And I have my notes right here and what's due for Sunday. Okay. So the LGs, when uh, I would say that definitely you're getting more used to them, but also the 8 minutes helped a lot. Allo 6 has is at 75%, a low 7 at 83%. Some of you are rushing it. I mean, look, I want all of you to be efficient. I want you to be able to just finish in 3 minutes or whatever, all the LOs. But unfortunately, I can see a pattern and people are trying to rush it and do the whole thing in 1 minute, 3 minutes. Don't get all the answers correct. So spend some time. It's an it's an open book assessment, right? So just spend some time and open the book if you have it. Watch the video that you definitely have, and go over the PowerPoint slideshow, and you should be fine. All the answers are there, even if you don't have the book. Okay, that's my comment from what you've submitted um, last night. All right, so today we're gonna cover one of the new chapters. So this is the new edition of the book, and it has the inclusion and diversity chapter, which is the last chapter of part 3, understanding sport and exercise environments. And then we're going to cover one more chapter from part 4, which is we're going to focus on group processes. And part 4 has 3 chapters, which means today we're like 9 to 11. Today we're going to cover chapter 9, which means the last 2 chapters of part 4 are for next week. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Let's go to Moodle site really quickly and see what's out over there. Let me close this. All right, so right now, uh, this is what you submitted, and this is what we're covering this week: diversity and inclusion, and then team dynamics and cohesion. We have obviously 2 LOs and 2 learning games for use. Okay, make sure you study the material, and you will be fine. If you have any questions tomorrow, we have office hours from 8 in the morning until 12:30 in the afternoon. Just log in and let's talk. All right. I'll stop sharing this and I will go and share our first, I'll find it, our first chapter for today, which is chapter 8. 1 second. All right, go here and share. There we go. Boom, boom. Let me. Is this working? It is. All right, so this is one of the new chapters, right, for this edition, the latest edition, diversity and inclusion. It's a hot topic anyway, um, especially even more so now, right? And we're not going to get into politics, but we're going to address a couple of things, especially bias, implicit bias, and our own blind spots. And we're going to see how this affects not only in social context, but also affects performance and what we should do as exercise and sport professionals. All right, so there's our cultures, our societies are more diverse than ever, and you see in the second dot some numbers, which means our sports societies, our sports are more diverse than ever before. Okay, now um, the socioeconomic status plays a role uh, when we talk about physical activity guidelines and who's meeting them. So as you can see, there's a positive correlation, which means the higher your socioeconomic status, the higher the probability of you meeting the physical activity guidelines. So that means something for us, right? So we need to know that and create the environment for everybody to meet those physical activity guidelines. At the same time, we're going to talk about that even more in a little bit. We need to be culturally competent. We'll explain what it is. We need to know where we stand. We need to be able to be aware of other cultures, understand them, and function in an environment that is very diverse. As you can see, and that's very, very important, and I want you to remember that from this chapter, is the third dog. Inclusion makes sense not only from a moral perspective, but also from a performance perspective. Inclusion helps performance, and we're going to prove that today. All right, I'm not going to cover everything. I'm not going to cover that. All right, so we're products of our cultures, okay? And as an example, I want you to think, how does your cultural background influence your thoughts about, NFL right now and kneeling? And now after that, I want you to think again, how does your cultural background influence your thoughts about Bruce Jenner transitioning to Caitlyn Jenner? Okay, so we have different cultural identities, and that makes us unique. I am a Greek citizen working in the States. You can be whatever you are, right? So we're different, uh, but we will try to put those differences today from the perspective of taking advantage of them in a good way towards performance. Okay. All right. Two things are important, and I may use myself as an example. Um, First of all, what is culture? More than a listing of characteristics, it involves power and privilege. So you may be advantaged or you may be oppressed. That's one. Then we have two more terms, enculturation, which usually happens as we grow older, right? Let's say you're an American citizen, I'm a Greek citizen, and we grow in our cultures, we're getting socialized. It's a process, right? And we are getting those skills and qualities that makes us member of the group that we are right now, right? And a lot of times, Greeks are different than North Americans. by this, and this, whatever that is, right? So that's part of that process called enculturation. Acculturation now, it's a little different, and I can use me as an example. I came to the States and I had to change, right, the way I used to live because I came to a different culture, and that means some things were different. Now, that culture affects me in a way, right, and I affect that culture. So we can all exist side by side, but there is again all these changes that happen. So from my perspective, I had to get used to a lot of things, food, humor, anything that is different in my culture, right? So it's a huge amount of changes that happens slowly, of course. All right. Some more definitions: what diversity, presence of socially meaningful differences among members of a diet or group. You have two or more people and they have differences, but in a social way. Like diversity, um, we see from a positive perspective, meaning that bringing people with differences is a good thing. Right? It's a good thing that we have different races and different nationalities and ethnicities, and then we come together. All these differences makes us better. Okay, so we usually try to increase diversity, and inclusion is okay. We're different. We're different. We're all different. Okay, more or less. Do we feel free to express that individuality? Do we feel free to express that weirdness and feel connected and feel that we belong in a group? Or we don't feel that way, so we don't feel included? So let's say you are a student athlete in one of our teams and you have an international student athlete. Does that person feel included? Can he or she express themselves? Can he feel that connection with you or not? And that's inclusion. All right, this is very important. I want to stay here for a second. Cultural competence involves recognizing culturally based differences as well as interacting and working effectively with people from cultures different than your own. Okay, and then you see we have three components. We have the cultural awareness, and that's the very first and probably the most important step is when we are understanding our own cultural beliefs, attitudes, values, and biases. So that's very important. That's a starting point. And then cultural knowledge means we understand other cultures, right? We try to learn and study and we understand them. And then the skills, the cultural skills have to do with the ability to communicate and interact in a culturally appropriate way. For example, if I understand my culture and then I understand the American culture, the North American culture, then in the classroom, I will be able to communicate and interact in a culturally appropriate way. Right? I don't want to say a joke that people in the US will find offensive or sexist or even not funny. Okay, so things that I may say with my friends in Greece may be very different than the jokes I will say with my friends in the States. So awareness, number one, knowledge, number two, and then have those skills to communicate, interact in a culturally appropriate way. And I like that word, those terms, implicit biases or blind spots. Like when you're driving, you see you have blind spots, and those blind spots you can't see. So we need to identify those blind spots. Sometimes I do activities in the classroom, and we talk about things like that, and then we're like, oh, I didn't know I was like that. I didn't know I didn't know that. Okay, so once we identify where we are and what we don't know, then it's way easier to develop those cultural skills, right? We all have biases. It's fine up to a point. Our goal is to identify, know where we are, identify those biases, and work in a way to be more culturally competent. Okay. Gender sexuality, of course, there's a huge issue, right? Um, and in sports, a lot of times it becomes more prevalent. And when we come to women, we have a figure right here. And you see, before I go there, we have a lack of women in sport leadership because of macro level and micro level factors. And we're going to explain them right here. We have the general societal expectations. We have institutional practices that prevent opportunities for women, less favorable leadership expectations for women, sport leadership viewed as masculine. Okay, you can see that, I guess. Men currently dominating leadership positions and looking for similar people to fill in those positions. Institutional discrimination, men perceived as powerful and women as compliant. And last but not least, men having more access to networks of influential people within the sports system. Okay, that's the so-called social capital. Um, a lot of sexual stereotypes about gays and lesbians and uh, all that spectrum of that community. Disabilities, that's another group of people that they will have a lot of benefits from participating in sport and exercise, and we should make it more accessible, right? For them, Special Olympics is an official way to participate. And as you can see, it doesn't only influence those athletes, but also their families, okay? Because their families, as you understand, they carry a lot of weight because of that, of their children who have disabilities. Barriers to sport participation, we have the individual barriers, that's figure 8.2. We have the social barriers, and of course, the environmental barriers. There are some of them that can be solved at an institutional level. There are some other ones that could be solved or could be attacked on a personal level. Each one of us could help. Some great videos in this slideshow. If you want to watch them, we get a lot of extra, but also like essential important information. Paralympic athletes, I have a lot of personal experience because I worked for the Olympic and Paralympic Games in 2004 in Athens. I got so inspired. I never expected that. The abilities of those people um, were way more than their so-called disabilities. Um, I don't even know where to start. Like they just didn't want to quit life. You would see them like try to swim with one hand and one leg, play volleyball without legs. It's amazing people, amazing stories, so encouraging, so motivational. I'm still thinking about that experience of mine and get pumped up sometimes. And here we have ADHD and ASD. People, of course, there's a lot of discrimination about them, but they could get so many benefits from participating in exercise and sports. Um, Weight bias. You'd expect, you'd expect people, exercise professionals, to not have weight bias, but you see it. You see it in that profession more than you would think you would see it. And people who are overweight and obese, they're stigmatized. And they really want to start exercising or working out, but they don't because they just feel intimidated by the weight bias that exists in the industry. All right. Race and ethnicity, of course, there are specific sports, and especially if we see the North American society, and I don't even want to go into politics, but you see even more now, with the NFL and NBA and WNBA, all these athletes coming out and getting involved. Um, there's a lot of bias concerning race and ethnicity. Another thing here that I'm sure you heard before, and I'm going to use NFL as an example. We say that African Americans are considered a lot of times super from an athletic perspective, but a lot of people, a lot of times we see them getting discriminated in a way that has to do with their intellectual capability. A lot of times there was that percentage of like, you see how many African Americans are playing in the NFL. How many of them? How many quarterbacks are African Americans? Okay, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Now they're getting more and more. You see that more and more often, but that had to do again with that stereotype. So athletically, yeah, superior. Intellectually, right. So now we see as that we had to fight that stereotype, and we are, which is great. Mm, acculturation is a very complex process, and you have to live into world. You have to try to maintain your own identity while trying to fit in a different identity. Sometimes you agree with the things that you see in that different culture, sometimes you don't, but you have to fit in, right? You have to fit in. Coaches have to really help and support, and everybody else in the team and all the stuff. Now here we have a transition model, okay? And that came up from after interviewing athletes playing internationally, right? And here you see that there are three phases: the pre-transition phase, when the athlete is getting ready to enter that new culture and move probably to that new country and play, right? The acute acculturation phase, where the athlete goes to fit in, understand the norms, and we're going to talk about what is a norm in a little bit. And then the social cultural adaptation phase, where now there's no so much resistance, you would say. They come to terms, and they have a mixture of that identity they had before with elements of the new culture that they got into. Uh, so knowing this model, how does it help us? Well, we can identify where an athlete stands, which phase, and we can help them accordingly, right? That's why this is important. As we said before, diversity is great from an ethical, moral perspective, but also from a performance perspective. We know that more diversified groups are better in performance. Okay. Nothing too amazing here. We'll already cover those three dots, of course. Being self-aware, we cover all those. Cultural blind spots. Yes, yes. Nothing really here. That's it. And that's the first chapter. We're done. I'm going to stop sharing. That's our kind of short chapter. So the next one, which has to do, as I said, we're going into part 4, and we're focusing on group processes. We're going to talk about team dynamics, and cohesion. All right. All right. let me close this and let me open the next one, chapter 9, and I'll start sharing my screen, as usual. All right, team dynamics and cohesion. And we're gonna start with some quotes, right? Because you know, especially in team sports, right, that uh, being individually very good at whatever you're playing. Okay, now we have NBA playoffs and NFL started. You can be great individually, but if you're not great as a team or in a team setting, and we're going to talk about that even more in a little bit, but excuse me, you see all these great quotes like the one from Michael Jordan: "Talent wins games, but teamwork wins championships." Okay, and that doesn't even also only going into sport groups, even exercise groups. That's important. Even like the team dynamic of yoga class will affect cohesion, right? If I go to yoga class and everybody's way more advanced than me, right? If we're kind of similar, and we're going to talk about other variables as well, then most likely at least my level of cohesion will be high. I want to stay in that group. All right, what is a group? First of all, a group is two or more people who interact and exert mutual influence on each other. That's it. Pretty simple. Now, what is a team? Let me tell you this right away. Okay, I want you to think for a second, and I'm going to give you the answer. Is a team always a group, or is a group always a team? Can be both. So is a group always a team, or is a team always a group? So as you can see, the common ground here is that members of both groups and teams may be attracted to each other and have some common goals. But teams are a special type of group. So all teams are groups, but not all groups of people are teams. Okay, one. Um, these are the unique characteristics of a team: the collective sense of identity, the we-ness rather than the I-ness, the distinctive roles. All members know their job, the structured modes of communication. Okay, and the norms. What are the norms? Social rules that guide members on what to do and on what not to do. Okay. All right. So these are the components of teamwork. Nothing really great here. I want to stick a little bit. I want to stay here for a second and talk about the theories of group development. So we have the linear, the cyclical, and the pendular perspective. Okay. So the very first one is based on the assumption that groups more progressively move progressively through different stages, and you can see those stages. Okay, the critical issues that arise in each stage are going to be addressed, and then when they are successfully dealt with, the group will move on to the next stage. So in the beginning, we have forming, which has to do with familiarization of the group, the formation of those relationships. Then we have storming. So who's going to be the leader, or who's going to go against the leader that we already have? There's some kind of interpersonal conflict, and then after that, everything kind of dies down, and there's more solidarity and cooperation. That's norming. And then at the very end, based on all this, we're able to take all that and channel it towards performance and team success. Forming, storming, norming, and performing. Now, the lifestyle perspective says, look, things are not always linear. So here, the assumption is that groups develop in a manner similar to the life cycle. So we have birth, we have growth, and we have death. Okay? So the group develops, stays together for 10, 15 year, weeks, or whatever. And 15 weeks, you know, is like a semester. And then they have to start over. Okay? Or you can say like it's one season. That's the lifestyle perspective. And then the last one, the pendular perspective, here and we emphasize the shifts that occur, as you can see, in interpersonal relationships during the growth and development of groups. The assumption here is that a group does not move progressively through stages in a linear fashion from the instant it forms. Okay? And then you can see orientation, where we have those 5 stages. We start with orientation, which is the cohesion and feelings of unity, you know, at that point are high. And then we go to differentiation and conflict. Teams are divided on smaller groups, subgroups inside the team, right? And conflicts arise as players compete for positions. Resolution and cohesion. Cohesion increases as group members share common concerns and feelings. And then we have number 4, differentiation and conflict. Team unity is weakened right there, as some individuals are rewarded while others are punished. And the last one is termination, number 5. With team success, feelings of cohesion are high, but if the season is unsuccessful, and I'm sure you've been in teams like that, then feelings of cohesion are low. Okay? Now, let's talk a little bit about group structure. We have group roles. And that's, as you can see, that involve behaviors required or expected. Now we have formal roles, and then we have informal roles. Let's stay a little bit right here. The formal role is I'm the coach, or you are the captain of the team. Okay? Excuse me. That's a very formal role, and you are expected to do specific things as you occupy that specific position. At the same time, there are a lot of times in the team, and you played sports, some of you are playing sports right now, that are informal. Like, right, who is the person that you talk to if you want to talk to the coach, the mediator? Who is the person who's always on time? Who is the person who's always late? Who is the party animal? Who is the psychologist of the team? Who, everybody's going to talk to him or her when something happens. Who is the most reliable person in the team? Who's the joker of the team? So there are a lot of times informal roles. Informal roles play a very, really affect the dynamics of the group. And sometimes we have conflict. But before I go there, the fourth dot is really important. There has to be clarity and acceptance of your role. And I usually give this example. So when I worked with Baylor Bears, the basketball team, top 10, top 5, and even top, like one of the top 5 teams in the country for a long time now. I remember very specifically, you know, Coach Malky would bring in athletes and she would explain to them what she would expect from them if they decided to join the team. So I do remember a case that Coach Malky was explaining to a female basketball player that your role here is to play in the second team. Your role is very important. Your role is to make practices as hard as possible for the first team, and specifically for the specific player that will have at that time the center. So the harder you train them during practice, the better for the whole team. So you have to be really, really careful. You're not gonna play in the first team, but if you join us, you're going to be part of a great team, and that great team will be part of your effort during practices. So that person had to decide at that point, Coach Malky gave them a very clear role. They had to accept the role or leave the team. And she did accept. But I always give that example. That's very important to understand, or somebody to tell you, explain to you, so you understand what you have to do, and then you need to accept your role. Okay. Sometimes we have conflict. So you may have an official captain, but then something happened, and another person just came up to the surface as and behaved as a captain, as a leader, as a motivator. Things happen a lot of times. That's why unofficial roles are very, very important as well. As I said 5 minutes ago, we'll have to talk about group norms. What's a norm? Okay, is the level of expectation in whatever group setting, team setting you are getting into. So level of performance, pattern, behavior, belief. Like have you ever switched teams? And then you see them, let's say concerning norms of productivity, like a higher level of productivity during practice. Okay, they have different norms. And usually, once those norms are established, you going into that culture, that microcosmos, you have to adjust to those norms. Right? And we have other norms from the society, like, you can't be too muscular if you're a woman and so on and so forth. But whether positive or negative, a lot of times we have those norms and we need to adjust. Here we have a great example, a great experiment. So they had a lot of people look at those 3 lines, this one, this one, this one, and compare it to this one. This is obviously 5 inches. And they told everybody but one person to kind of say that this is not the one that's equal to this. And everybody, let's say they chose the 6 1/4 of an inch. And everybody said that this is equal to this. So that one person that was thinking that 5 inches, is equal obviously to 5 inches, this to this, they changed their opinion, which comes to prove that a lot of times we have to adjust to the group, even if we don't think is the right thing to do. Okay, I think that was a pretty cool, pretty neat experiment. Social support is very important. I'm going to talk about social support right now. Exchange of resources between at least 2 people perceived by the provider and the recipient as intended to enhance the well-being of the recipient. Okay, and you can see what social support is: appraisal, information, reassurance, companionship, reduce uncertainty during times of stress, aids in mental and physical recovery, and improves communication. There are a lot of different kinds of social support. You see listening support, emotional support, emotional challenge support, and so on and so forth. So it's about, like, for example, the first one is the perception that someone else is listening without giving advice or being judgmental. So maybe you have a friend like that you like talking to. The third one is emotional challenge support. So the perception that another person is challenging the support recipient to evaluate their attitudes, values, and feelings. Maybe you have another friend that you go talk to them when you need to be challenged. Task appreciation support. The perception that another person is acknowledging the support recipient's efforts and expressing appreciation for the work that person does. And you see the personal assistance support has to do with provide services or help, like running an errand or making some food for that person because they're going through something. Okay. Nothing too important here that you can read by yourselves. All right. These are guidelines of how to create an effective team climate: proximity, distinctiveness, fairness, similarity, and task interdependence. Organizational sports psychology is a field of sports psychology that is really interested what creates those working environments in sport organizations. I want to talk about Ivan Steiner for a second. Ivan Steiner's model here, as you can see. And he said that the actual productivity has to do with the potential productivity minus the losses due to fault group processes. Um, and by potential productivity, he referred to that that's a team's possible best performance given its players' ability, knowledge, and skill, as well as the demands of the task. So, according to him, individual ability is probably the most important resource for team sports. So we need to recruit those people with the highest individual ability. However, as you can see in this model, he implies that doesn't really match the potential productivity that we could have. So when a team efficiently uses all these available resources, then we can reach that potential. So again, what we should do is recruit the people, according to this model, with the highest individual productivity, and then try to minimize those losses. How can we do that? The coach is really important, right? The coach is really important. He or she has to increase relevant resources. He or she has to reduce process losses. So we can take all that individual, the potential productivity of the individual and put them all together and create the best team we can create. All right, I want to stop here for a second again and talk about the Riegemann effect and social loafing, which I find it really interesting. So here we have the phenomenon by which individual performance decreases as the number of people in the group increases. So the number of people in the group increases, and then the individual performance decreases. And we'll have a term here that I want you to know, it's called social loafing, when individuals within a group or team put forth less than 100% effort, due to loss of motivation, okay? And what I want to say here is that this came from an old experiment. You know, people had to pull on a rope, and then let's say everybody could pull 100 pounds. And as they start increasing the number of people, you know, 2 people, you would expect 200, 3 people, 300, 4 people, 400, and so on and so forth. They came out, the thing is that as they start increasing the person, like 2 people pulled 93% of the individual potential. Three-person group now, 3-person team went to 85% of the individual performance. All the way to 8% went down to guess what? 49% of the individual performance that you would expect, right? So that was a cool way, back then, a cool experiment again, to observe social loafing. When do we have social loafing? You can see here a lot of conditions. Individuals' output cannot be independently evaluated. So nobody will know if I go 100% or not, right? If I don't care, if my goal is low, if nobody can compare me with the group standard of whatever I do. If I don't know the other people, if the other ones are pretty good, so yeah, they'll do most of it, fine, okay? Contribution is perceived as redundant. You may have a weaker opponent, and the more you have in the group, the more social loafing you should expect. Social loafing happens in group projects in our classrooms as well. Okay, think about that too. And stop it. Help as much as you can. So these are ways to eliminate social loafing or decrease it. Nothing really important here. Dynamics. This is where I want to stop. Group cohesion, which is the second part of the second chapter for today. What is group cohesion? A dynamic process reflected in the tendency for a group to stick together and remain united in the pursuit of its instrumental objectives and or for the satisfaction of member affective needs. Okay, and you can see the task cohesion and you can also see the social cohesion. I'll stop here for a second. What's the task cohesion? The degree to which group members work together to achieve common goals and objectives, like the championship. What's social cohesion? The interpersonal attractions among group members, usually off court, off field, right? And we usually want them both. We usually want them both. We want high task cohesion and high social cohesion. Do we have examples of successful teams with high task cohesion and low social cohesion? Yes. I don't know if you remember Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant in the Lakers, right? There were all these rumors that they wouldn't get along off the court, but they did play amazing basketball, right? But in general, we want both. Okay, we want the teammates to be good and have the same goals, but also like each other. Okay. How can you measure that? There's specific questionnaires. Of course, the higher the cohesion, the higher the performance. Nothing really here. We go back. Other factors. Yeah, nothing really. Pretty self-explanatory. All this, even the guidelines, effective communication, higher team identity, of course. Yeah, that's it for today. I'm going to stop sharing. Again, take your time with your LOs and with your LGs. I'm here if you want anything tomorrow, office hours. Don't forget that, okay? Have a great week. In the meantime, lift intentionally, no habitually. Bye, guys.